4%. So all this can be different percentages. 10 in common. We can will it. We can hold it as community property with our significant other. If we're married, we can sell it. There's a lot of things we could do with it. And how would that be an advantage for you working in the offices? Well, you go out and you sell a fourplex. The average fourplex right now is going to sell for over $1 million. And so if you, well, you know, this is a good example. I have fourplexes I bought for as little as $32,000. How much are they worth now? Over $1 million, yeah. Well, that's what you're looking at. You're still paying more for the one I bought for less a long time ago. But it has nothing to do with anything, because now what happens now, you're going to pay like $1 million or more dollars, but you guys are going to see the $10 million fourplex. But you're interested in the future, not the past. You're interested in doing, not thinking. You know, when in trouble or in doubt, run in a circle, scream and shout. You're not going to look at the back or look behind you and say, oh, I wish I'd lived then, you know. I could have bought a house for $500, you know. No. You buy it today, because then $500 was the equivalent of what it is today. Okay? So now, you have this income, and I say $25,000, it's probably going to be more like $2 million, but it's going to have the buying power of $25,000. Okay, so then, tenancy in common, what you can do, you go and you list a fourplex, and you have other people that you know that would like to invest with you in a fourplex. And so let's say the cash down payment on a fourplex is $300,000. And you guys always say, no, I don't have $300,000. How am I right to practice that? How am I going to get $300,000? Come on, everybody. How am I going to get $300,000? What am I going to do? I can't do it like that. No, you can't. All you do is you get all the people around here interested in what you're doing. By then you're probably going to be managing some property, and they're interested in what you're doing. Your first commission, you just leave it in. Your first commission is going to be around $60,000. Leave it in. Ask the buyer. I've never had a buyer tell me no. So you mind if I leave my commission in and so I can own a small part? Then you'll end up managing it, which there's not real money in that. But you're going to end up managing it. It's gas money and that kind of thing, and you're going to get experience managing. And then other people are going to pick you up to do management for them. You have to have a broker's license, but that's okay. Now, you own part of the fourplex. The fourplex goes up in value. Let's say you owe 10% of it. So it goes up in value. Now it goes up to $1 million, goes up to $1.5 million. Well, what was the loan on? $700,000. You go to sell it. I don't want to complicate this for you right now. You go to sell it. Who's likely going to be the listing agent? You. Everybody say that. You. Or in your case, you're going to say me. And then, so then you're going to have a whole 6% in another group. So you have the buyer and the seller. So now you got $90,000. You already had 60. Okay, you have expenses of sale, but you owe them 10%. So you go sell it. Let's pretend we don't have any expenses of sale. We come out of that with $800,000. In other words, it's up to $1.5 million. Now we have a $700,000 loan. So that leaves us with $800,000. And you own 10% of it. So you have 10% of that's going to be $80,000, right? $80,000. You have your new $90,000. There you go. You got $160,000, $170,000. But second time you go into it, maybe you're going to need $400,000, but you know you've got about half of it. And then after another 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, depending on the market, you're going to end up owning it. You'll end up owning every one. You will. You know, I'm living proof. Living proof. I didn't know it was going to happen like that. I just did. People want to get out of it, and I tried to figure out if I could stay in it. You know, and then so that's tenancy in common, though. You get a whole bunch of other people, and the big advantage for us with that is that we can all be in the same thing. We don't have to have the exact same amount to do it. How many people are going to have to qualify for the loan? Usually 1 or 2. The lenders don't like a lot of people on the loans. That solves some other problems that we come into. There we go. Community property, all property acquired by husband or wife during marriage when not acquired as separate property of either. Remember earlier I said, you can still hold separate property. You can hold property separate. We may want it for whatever reason. Raven and I are married, for whatever reason I want her, usually tax reason, I want her to own a 40-unit building, and then I'll own a 40-unit building in our own name. But watch community property. Community property can be willed, and the reason it can be willed is that it lends itself perfectly to the family. It lends itself perfectly to the family trust, okay? And when it lends itself to the family trust, what that means is, let's say when Raven and I got married, she had 2 kids. And when we got married, I had 2 kids. And then we had 4 kids. Rusty. So now we have, how many kids we have? 4. No, we have 4 of our own. She had 2, and I had 2. We have 8 kids. You know, they may be kind of grown, you know, or whatever, you know, but now we're starting to think about our estate, and we're starting to acquire a lot of property, and start thinking, ooh, everybody go, ooh. And so if I die, we get a family trust. And so I've set it up so if I die, my half is going to go to my kids and our kids. Does that make sense? Yeah. So my kids and our kids. And then it's going to be for Raven's use. She gets to use it until her death. And that's when it will actually pass. But in the meantime, it really does go to them. And if something happens to her, remember I said you can't count on somebody dying. She's younger than I am, I think. The thing is that you can't count on people dying in the right order. You know? So the same thing for her, we'll set her up so if she dies first, then her half is going to go to her kids and our kids. Okay? We don't want us, well, I go out and get married again and have 6 kids. She doesn't want her part going to that. See, these things you have to think about when you're estate planning. Oh, so anyway, that's where the community property lends itself, you know, to the family and to the family trust. What's the big problem with it? It's usually because of guys like Starlin. Starlin has a piece of property, and community property. He can will it to anybody. Now he goes out and finds a 13-year-old girlfriend. Uh-oh. And he wills her his half of the family home that's being held in community property. Does that ever happen? Yeah. And then Starlin dies, and let's say he's married to Yessie. And she didn't know about the girlfriend. Chances are she doesn't want the girlfriend living with her. Starlin dies. The little girl, the girlfriend inherits half the house. Yessie says, well, I don't want her living here. Well, you don't know. Maybe they get along. I don't know. But the thing is, and now what's going to happen? They're going to have to end up selling the house, and that little girl's going to get happy. Yes, is going to get happy. Problem? That's a problem in the community property. They also have a community property with right of survivorship for that reason. But it doesn't lend itself to the trust, you know, and the girls just have to keep your eye on the guys. It usually happens, guys usually do that. It's usually not girls that do that. It's usually guys that do that. You know, I don't know what happens to guys when they get 50 or 60 or something, like they start falling in love with teenagers or something. So community property, separate property, property acquired before marriage or afterwards by gift, bequest, devise, or descent are not part of community property. Now, this means that unless it's suppose Raven and I are married, we hold everything that's in the family trust and everything, and she inherits $2 million. Is half of that mine?
Yes.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Is that first sentence? First sentence up there. First sentence up there. I had an ex-wife thought she inherited something one time.
That's like when my ex-husband, I had some money from my first marriage.
Yeah.
He thought he was entitled to
all of it.
Some of it.
Yeah.
Some of that money that I had got from my first marriage. I was like, no. And the lawyer was like, no.
The rocking chair in the front porch, bud, and that's it.
That's it.
Separate property, property acquired before marriage or afterward by gift, bequest. Remember we did bequest the other day? Mm-hmm. Gift is what? Gift. I say Yessie is my little daughter, and I say, oh, here, honey, I want to give you a couple $100,000. A bequest is what? Personal property. And devise is real property. Okay? Or descent, act of law. Okay? That does not go to the wife or the husband. It's not community property. Purchases, either spouse may buy real or personal property without the consent of the other. Contract entered into by one spouse is binding on both. So if I go out and I buy a piece of property, and Raymond and I are still married, and I go out and I buy a 40-unit apartment building, that's binding. You know, she probably wants to buy it too, and eventually her name is either going to have to go on, or we have to quit claiming it, you know, somehow or another, get the title straightened out. But right, for law purposes, the law is written a certain way, but then when we get out into practice, it's done differently. All right, so right now, then we'll say that, you know, if I go out and I bind us to buy a 40-unit building, you know, then you're bound too. If something happens to me. Sales, either spouse may sell community property for valuable consideration, except furnishings and clothing, but a gift requires written consent of the other spouse. A sale of real property may be attempted by one spouse, but the other spouse has 1 year after the deed is recorded to void the sale. So if you don't have both signatures on it, the title company, we always have title insurance to insure the title company's not going to insure because of that 1 year. They then, if they allow that to go ahead and close, and they put their title insurance on it, then they would be saying, okay, if that spouse comes back within 1 year, we'll pay them whatever the loss is. Okay? You don't need to know that. Community property will, two possibilities. When title is held as community property, either spouse may dispose of his or her 1/2 interest by will. If not will, all interest passes to surviving spouse. So Raven and I, you know, we're married and we have property, we've acquired property, and we never ever really said, you know, what is this, Rob and Raven, you know, as community property, most of it, some of it wasn't, but then I died. Okay, so then we don't have a will. We never wrote the will. We're going to, but we didn't. I've had this happen 3 times with clients, you know? And so then it's going to pass to Raven. Just automatically will pass to Raven. For community property acquired after 2000, and this is, they're making reference to the, with the right of survivorship. I don't want to go in there, not testing on that right now. It does exist. Contracts, property of the community is liable for contracts of either spouse for marriage, including listings. Raven goes out, and this is a problem with the listing. You guys all know what a listing is? You hire a broker to sell a property. And, you know, I'm out of town, and Raven thinks, oh, we ought to sell that 6-unit apartment and trade it up for something else. And she lists it with Starlin Brokers. And that listing contract that she signed with Starlin is an employment contract. She's promising him that if he uses due diligence and comes up with a buyer ready, willing, and able, she'll pay him a 6% commission. She's not promising that she'll sell the property. She's promising she'll pay the commission. So they're going to ask you a question, is that binding? Yes, it is. It's binding on that contract, and the contract isn't will she sell it. The contract is, does she have to pay the commission? And yes. Just so you get that thing right. Tenancy and partnership. Tenancy and partnership is a good thing. In partnership, they separated this. I've had 2 buddies that, you know, they grew up together, went to high school together. Both of them, 2 sets of them, both of them even went through the services together, okay? And then when they got out, the one, they owned the little markets and gas stations, okay? And the other one, they owned all real property. So they never, ever had a partnership agreement at all. It's not required by law. That's a question in your test. So what is not required, you know, to be in writing, and that would be a partnership agreement. And so both of them at different times just dropped dead. And both of them at 42 dropped dead. I don't know what the magic of that was. But anyway, you know, Bill, when he dropped dead, he just dropped dead. You know, he had a bad heart, and everybody knew that. 42 years old, he dropped dead. Okay, so then his partner had to figure out what they're going to do with this property and that. Usually the families knew each other well, and, you know, they've done a lot of things together. Jackie, when he died, his partner and him had markets and gas stations. They also had real property too. And so then he had to settle the business. And that's what the tenancy and partnership allows them to do. Finish the business up, and after they get it finished up, and normally what happens, they'll buy the heirs out. Okay, they will buy them out. That's usually what happens. And usually you can always, I mean, if there's any kind of equity at all, you can get a loan on it and buy them out. It's not a big problem. That's tenancy and partnership. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because we don't spend much time on testing on that. Acquisition and transfer. California Civil Code specifies 5 ways in which property may be transferred or acquired, and these are by. And these are going to be different because when we're thinking about how property is transferred, we think about it being sold and purchased. That's what we think about. But sometimes property is transferred. What if I leave this isn't mine, but what if it was, I leave it here? And then somebody finds it, you know, that's a kind of a transfer, is it? And we have finders, keepers, losers, weepers, don't we? No, maybe, we don't know. So this defines it. Property can be transferred by will. You know, we have a bunch of property, Raven and I leave everything to her. No kids, nothing, just everything to her. Succession. Succession is a natural sequence. Succession would be sequence. A sequence. What happens if you die without a will? Well, if you die without a will, the state of California or the state where you have property, they have a will. It's written for you. Okay, already, and it will tell you where your assets are going to go. If you have a will, it's probably better. Accession. Accession means you gradually acquired it, like when the wind blows. You know those beautiful rocks are in Arizona and Utah? And, you know, one time they were stand-up rocks. You know, they wouldn't have all those beautiful cards, so where'd the dirt go? The dirt went flying onto somebody else's land. And sometimes there's some kind of a complication about who owns what blew over there. And the law simply says if something blows off those rocks, erosion, and it goes over in Starland's place, it belongs to Starland. The same thing is true if we have a storm like today, and Starland lives on a river on that side, and I live over here, and a big chunk of my property gets blown off because of the storm and goes over and sticks onto Starland's property. It's his. That's a cession, okay? And then we have transfer. And transfer is what we think of mostly. How do we transfer property? I hereby grant and deed to Starland. Was Teresa? What's your name again?
Sherry.
What is it?
Sherry. S-H-E-R-R.
Sherry? Okay. I don't get the name, I don't know. Well, prettier name, no. And so I went to Sherry, I transferred something to Sherry, I sell it to her. Will, now we're going to wills a little bit, don't get really involved with this, but this is a good start for you guys with wills. And you're going to get involved with people on how they hold property because you're going to be dealing with people that have large holdings. And in that they have large holdings, this is good for you too. In that they have large holdings, these holdings have to be held certain ways, you know, for tax purposes, or it's better if they are. So a will is an instrument used to dispose of property acquired during life to designated beneficiaries effective upon the death of the person who writes it. And the person who writes it is going to be called a testator. What's that mean? To testate means to write. To testify. That's the word you guys come closest with, testify. So I testify this is what I want done with all of my holdings, so I'm my testator. What if I die without a will? Then I'm called an intestator, or I have died intestate. So then they run it all together. In English we do that, we change the pronunciation to it. We don't say intestator, which would be probably more correct, we say intestate. Well, so anyway, here, types of wills. A witness will. A witness will is a will. Usually you go to an attorney's office and he makes out a will for you, and then you have usually a couple kids that work in that office, and then they will sign it. The attorney signs it, you sign it, and two usually legal, what do you call them, legal paralegals. Usually a couple little paralegals, sometimes the secretary sign it. You know, and then they're gone. It's just assumed that since everybody signed it all at the same time, yeah, it's good and it's valid. And then years later, somebody dies, you know, and somebody's got to have a copy of that too, huh? It's a good idea to have copies around. It's a good idea to have signed copies.
Yes.
I had one sister die, and she had a will, but I had a copy of it, but I didn't have a signed copy. So I had to finally find the guy that wrote it, the attorney that wrote it, and he was like 88, I think. And he died during the probate, you know, but the thing was he did have a signed copy, which is why, you know, I had to go to court and plead for a signature. You know. So witness will is one that, you made out and then you signed it. And then a couple of people signed and said, yeah, that was them. Then we come to the next one, is holographic will. Everybody go on, holographic, I say holographic will. Tomorrow at the breakfast next week, I'll say, holographic, you go. Okay, ready? Let's practice. Holographic. Good. Okay, a holographic will is a will that's made out of your own handwriting. That somebody decides, ooh, I need a will. You don't have it made out of a will, you don't have it feeling too good, I better write a will. So they write a will. To whom it may concern, and they write it out. As long as it's in their own handwriting, it's going to be considered by the courts a valid will. Only the parts that are not valid, that are illegal or whatever, I need all my cocaine, you can't do that. But the rest of it, is okay. As long as it's legal. Like my property on Elm Street in Torrance, you don't have to have a legal even there. How many properties do you own on Elm Street in Torrance? One. That's illegal enough. And then a non-cubitive will is a deathbed will. And the deathbed will in California is not recognized now since, I don't know, it's like 1975 or something like that. I always forget the date on it. It's in there somewhere. But non-cubitive will was like this, I'm up in front of the class and I go, oh, damn. Oh, make sure Jake gets my cheek. We call it deathbed will. Deathbed will. It was only good for about $60,000. I'm sure it's higher than that now wherever they're used. But California outlawed them a long time. They said, no, it's nonsense. When people are dying, they don't know what they're doing. How many people here would choose to die? See? So if you're dying, you don't really know what you're doing. So consequently, they say, well, we're going to do this. What do you think? I have some good thoughts, You're going to the thing tomorrow, right? We're having breakfast on Wednesday tomorrow.
I have a question. For the when you said the deathbed will, how is that determined that they actually made that?
Non-cubitive, there'll be witnesses. They're non-cubitive. Will I die up here? Look at all your kids in the class. Yeah. He said leave it to Jake or Jerk, we're not sure which. There was no Jerk in the class, so it'll be Jake. Okay? That's how it would come about. So there'd be people there that say, well, I don't know who Jake is, but that's what he said. Leave everything to Jake. Got it? But they're not legal in California anyway. You want to have it written. Even if you do it really informal, a holographic writing. But you'd have to put it where somebody can discover it or give it to somebody so they'll have it and date it and all that stuff. Okay, that's the types of wills. And this goes into what I already told you. A witness will, written is signed by the maker in the presence of at least two witnesses who also signed the will in the presence of the maker. So you go to your attorney's office, and the attorney signs it, and then usually a couple of the kids that work in his office sign it. It could be anybody, and you. Witness wills are normally made by attorneys. So now when it says that in law, witness wills are normally made by attorneys. Do they have to be made by attorneys? The answer is no. But the answer